Denica and Deja Collins might seem like just quiet twin girls, but when three white football players trap them behind the gym, laughing, filming, grabbing, they expect tears and fear. What they don't realize is that these sisters aren't just cheerleaders. They're fourth-degree black belts, trained since they could walk, disciplined, fierce, and done staying quiet. When they fight back and come out on top, the school punishes them instead of the boys. Suddenly, the whole system is stacked against them. Fighting back isn't just about physical strength anymore. How do you stand up to bullies backed by an entire institution? And what happens when two sisters trained for battle refuse to back down? Before we dive deeper, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The crowd erupted as Denica and Deja struck their final pose, their burgundy and gold uniforms shining under the gym lights. Sweat glistened on their dark skin, but their matching braids stayed flawless, not a hair out of place. They smiled, breathing hard from the intense routine they'd just nailed. "That's how it's done!" Coach Riley shouted, clutching her clipboard. The rest of the Millstone High cheer squad rushed to hug the twins, while the judges huddled at their table. Denica caught her breath first, already analyzing every move. "How was the timing on that last flip?" she whispered to Deja. "Perfect," Deja replied, squeezing her sister's hand. Her eyes sparkled with the fierce joy of success. The packed gym held parents and students from across the region. Most of the Millstone football team sat in the bleachers, though their expressions looked more annoyed than impressed. Quarterback Logan Mitchell kept checking his phone, barely watching. Then came the moment everyone waited for. The announcer's voice boomed, "The winner of this year's regional championship." Coach Riley grabbed the twins' shoulders. The squad linked hands, a chain of burgundy and gold. The crowd's cheers drowned out everything else. Denica and Deja hugged tightly as their teammates jumped and screamed around them. Coach Riley wiped tears as she lifted the shining trophy. "It's been 15 years since Millstone took regionals," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And it wouldn't have happened without our Collins twins. Their dedication, precision, leadership, they raised the bar for all of us." Deja beamed, while Denica modestly lowered her gaze. They had earned this moment, spending countless hours perfecting their craft. As the photographer called for pictures, the twins posed with their teammates, trophy in hand. Their smiles were real but reserved. At their mostly white school, drawing too much attention was risky. As the crowd thinned, snatches of conversation drifted from the football players' bleachers. "Must be nice getting all that attention," Brent Ashford sneered. "We actually work for our wins," Chase Dunning mocked, laughing. "Careful. They might hear you with those tight braids." The twins ignored the comments, focusing on packing up. They'd heard these jabs before, small attempts to undermine their success. Monday came too fast. The trophy gleamed in the school display case, right beside the football team's collection. Denica and Deja walked the hallway, textbooks tight in their arms. "Did you hear about the budget meeting?" Logan's voice carried as he leaned against his locker with Brent and Chase. "Coach Thompson says if we don't make state, they'll shift funds to other programs." Brent spat the word cheerleading like it was an insult. Jumping around in sparkly outfits isn't a sport. Chase laughed loudly, eyes flicking to the twins as they passed. Denica kept her gaze ahead, steady and calm, but Deja saw her sister's jaw clench, the only sign of her irritation. "Just ignore them," Deja whispered, though her fists tightened at her sides. "They're not worth it." The twins continued down the hall, their matching burgundy and gold jackets marking them out. Other students congratulated them, but they nodded politely and moved on. They could feel the football players' eyes and hear their smirks, but Denisa and Deja had learned to pick their battles carefully. They exchanged a knowing look as they headed to the gym for practice, faces calm but minds already strategizing. The gym doors shut behind them, leaving the whispers and sneers behind, for now. The afternoon sun beat down as the cheer squad rehearsed their new routine. Danica and Deja moved flawlessly in sync, bodies flowing with practiced grace. Sweat soaked their burgundy practice uniforms, but their focus never wavered. "Okay, from the pyramid transition," Coach Riley called, clipboard in hand. "Remember, we have to be sharper than ever if we want to dominate at state," Coach Riley reminded the squad. The team took their positions, with the twins as the base supports. Just as they were about to begin, loud laughter broke out from the sidelines. Logan Mitchell and Brent Ashford had wandered over from football practice, still in their jerseys, casually leaning against the fence with smirks, making no effort to hide their sneers. "Hey, Collins twins," Brent called mockingly. "Those uniforms look a bit tight. Not that anyone's complaining." Some cheerleaders shifted uncomfortably, but Danica and Deja stayed in place, their faces unreadable. "Maybe you should show that split move again," Logan added with a grin. "You know, for team spirit." Coach Riley marched over, her usual warmth replaced by firm resolve. "This is a closed practice. You boys need to leave now." "Oh, come on, Coach," Logan said in a fake innocent tone that made Deja's stomach twist. "We're just showing some love for our award-winning squad." "Yeah," Brent chimed in. "Since they're getting all the attention lately, might as well see what all the fuss is about." "I said leave," Coach Riley's voice hardened, "or I'll report this harassment to Principal Stevens." Logan laughed. "Harassment? We're just watching practice, right, Brent?" Brent grinned wider. "Maybe if you focused more on coaching and less on being so uptight, they wouldn't look so stiff out there." A few cheerleaders gasped. Coach Riley's face flushed red. "That's it. Practice is over for today, girls. Hit the showers." She pulled out her phone and dialed the principal's office. As the squad packed up, Logan and Brent continued their jabs, loud enough to be heard. "Look at them run away," Brent sneered. "So much for all that confidence. Guess they only perform when the spotlight's on," Logan added. Danica touched Deja's arm, feeling her sister tense with anger. "Not here," she whispered. "Not now." The twins walked to the locker room with calm, measured steps, heads held high despite the ongoing jeers behind them. They changed in silence, their movements automatic from years of routine. Later that evening, the Collins family gathered around their modest dining table. Marcus Collins, their father, had just served his famous chicken and rice while their Aunt Renee poured lemonade. "How was practice today?" Marcus asked, passing green beans to Deja. The twins exchanged looks. Danica spoke first, her tone neutral. Some of the football players showed up. Logan Mitchell and Brent Ashford. Marcus's fork paused midair. "The quarterback and that rich kid, what did they want?" "They were just being jerks," Deja said, pushing rice around her plate, "making stupid comments about our uniforms and how we move." "Coach Riley tried to make them leave," Danica added, "but they mocked her too." Aunt Renee, quietly eating, set down her fork. Her eyes studied the twins closely, noticing their controlled movements and tense shoulders. "Did they touch you?" Renee asked softly but directly. "No," both girls answered quickly. "Not yet," Deja muttered under her breath. Marcus frowned, his protective instincts clear. "Maybe I should talk to their parents or the principal." "Dad, no," Danica shook her head. "That'll only make things worse. We can handle it." "Besides," Deja added, stabbing a green bean with more force than needed, "Logan's dad is on the school board, and Brent's family donates tons to the athletic department. They never get into real trouble." Aunt Renee remained silent, but kept watching the girls, noting how they managed their anger and chose their words carefully. Her own hands, calloused from decades of martial arts training, rested calmly on the table. "Still," Marcus insisted, "if they're harassing you, we're fine, Dad," Danica cut in. "Really? They just want a reaction because they're mad about the attention the squad's getting." "Yeah," Deja forced a smile. "They're just entitled jerks, nothing new." The conversation shifted. Marcus's work at the auto shop, Renee's community law clinic, upcoming tests. But the tension lingered, especially in how Renee observed the twins, reading every sign of their contained fury. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the high windows of the girls' locker room, casting long shadows over the metal lockers. Danica adjusted her burgundy practice uniform, double-checking her hair bow when something caught her eye in the mirror. Taped to the glass was a crudely printed racist meme. Black cheerleaders edited to look like monkeys, with hateful text below. Danica's stomach tightened, but her face stayed calm as she tore the paper down. The crinkling sound echoed in the empty locker room. She glanced around, noticing the image was placed right at her eye level. This wasn't random. This was personal. This was targeted. The locker room door swung open as Deja stepped inside, gripping her phone tightly. Her usual bright smile was replaced by a storm of anger. "Did you see what they did?" she demanded, thrusting her phone toward Danica. Danica smoothed out the crumpled paper taped to the mirror. "You mean besides this?" she asked. "They even added me to some group chat." Deja's voice trembled as she opened the messages. "Look at what they're posting." Danica leaned in to watch the screen fill with videos, clips from their practices and competitions, all edited with racist music and cruel captions. Comments from Logan, Brent, and Chase flooded the chat, each more degrading than the last. "Ghetto routine," Deja read, her voice tight. "Maybe they should stick to hip-hop. They even added monkey sounds over our regional performance." Danica's jaw tightened. "How many people are in this chat?" "At least 20, Deja replied as they scrolled through the member list. "Mostly football players, plus a few others. Chase added me this morning by mistake. He removed me right after, but I took screenshots." The twins stood silently, the weight of this attack pressing down on them. The locker room suddenly felt smaller, less safe. "We should tell Coach Riley," Danica finally said, carefully folding the hateful meme and slipping it into her bag. "Why?" Deja slammed her locker shut. "So she reports it and nothing changes? You know Logan's dad will just say it's a joke or blame someone else." "We need to document everything," Danica insisted. "Build a record." "A record of what? How they can get away with anything?" Deja's voice rose, but she caught herself, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, just like they'd been taught. "Sorry, I'm just tired of staying silent." Danica reached out, touching her sister's arm. "I know, me too." They finished changing in silence, lost in their own thoughts. The day passed in a blur of classes, with pointed looks and whispered comments trailing them through the halls. Logan and his friends made sure to bump into them between periods, flashing the same smirks and fake "my bad" apologies that fooled no one. By afternoon practice, the tension was almost tangible. Coach Riley noticed their distraction during warm-ups. "Everything okay, girls?" she asked during a water break. "You seem off today." "We're fine," they replied in unison, their practiced response automatic. After practice, as usual, the twins stayed behind for extra stretching. The back lot behind the gym was their favorite spot, quiet, away from prying eyes, and with plenty of room to stretch fully. As they crossed the empty parking lot, low laughter and footsteps echoed behind them. Danica didn't need to turn to know who it was. 3 sets of footsteps pretending to be quiet but failing miserably. The laughter grew louder, accompanied by the crinkle of more printed memes and the click of a phone camera. Deja's shoulders tensed, but she matched her sister's steady pace. Years of training kept them calm and composed. No fear, no loss of control. The backlot came into view, isolated and empty, perfect for practice or an ambush. The laughter was closer now, and a video started playing, their regional routine with the hateful edits. Danica felt the atmosphere shift, the weight of malice thickening with every step. Without turning, she flexed her hands, cracking each knuckle softly, a small ritual that grounded her. She sensed Deja doing the same, their twin instincts perfectly in sync. The footsteps quickened. Logan, Brent, and Chase were no longer hiding their approach, their confidence fed by months of unchecked harassment and privilege. The twins kept walking, calm and controlled. The back lot was eerily silent as they reached their usual stretching spot by the chain-link fence. The footsteps behind them grew louder, deliberate now. "Hey, Collins girls." Logan's voice oozed fake friendliness. "Having a private practice session?" The twins turned slowly, standing tall and poised. 3 phones were already out recording. Logan stood center, flanked by Brent and Chase, their football Letterman jackets gleaming in the late afternoon sun. "You know," Brent said, stepping closer, "we've been watching your routines. Really interesting moves you got there." Chase hung back slightly, his phone wobbling as he filmed, his usual smirk forced and nervous. "Leave us alone," Danica said quietly, voice steady. "We're just trying to practice," Logan smiled wider. "Oh, we want to see you practice, up close and personal." Suddenly, he shoved Deja hard against the fence. The metal rattled loudly. "Hey!" Danica stepped forward, but Brent was already there, grabbing at her skirt with one hand while keeping his phone steady with the other. "Come on, show us those special moves," Brent laughed. "Maybe do a little dance for the camera." Time seemed to slow. Danica felt a familiar calm wash over her. Years of training took over. Deja caught Danica's eye, a silent understanding passing between them in an instant. Deja acted first. As Logan reached to shove her again, she shifted her weight, redirecting his momentum. Her hand shot out, locking his wrist perfectly. Before he could react, she twisted, using his own force to slam him face first into the fence. At the same moment, Danica dropped into a low stance. Brent's grip on her skirt gave her the perfect leverage. She spun, sweeping her leg in a precise arc, knocking him behind the knees. As he stumbled, her elbow struck his solar plexus with surgical accuracy. Chase stumbled backward, dropping his phone to the ground. "Wait, I didn't—" Danica was already closing in. 2 quick steps, then a palm strike to his nose, gentle enough to avoid permanent damage, but forceful enough to break cartilage. Blood sprayed. Logan struggled to push off the fence, but Deja held his arm hyperextended. She pressed just enough for him to gasp. "Stop, please," he wheezed. Brent curled on his side, struggling to breathe, each shallow breath stabbing his ribs. Chase sat in the dirt, clutching his bleeding nose. The entire confrontation lasted less than 10 seconds. Deja released Logan with a gentle shove, sending him staggering. He caught the fence, eyes wide with shock and fear. The twins stood tall, composed, adjusting their uniforms, every hair in place, their breathing steady. 3 phones lay cracked on the ground, still recording. Danica picked each one up, dropping them deliberately into a nearby puddle. "Our aunt taught us more than just dancing," she said softly, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. The boys looked up at them, their earlier bravado replaced by confusion and fear. Blood dripped from Chase's nose onto his white Letterman jacket. Brent whimpered softly as he struggled to rise. Logan just stared, mouth opening and closing without a sound. Deja dusted dirt from her skirt slowly, calmly. "You should probably get some ice for that," she said kindly, nodding at Chase's nose. The twins gathered their bags, their movements perfectly synchronized. Shoulders back, heads high, just as they'd been taught, both on and off the mat. "If anyone asks," Danica said calmly, "we were just stretching, right?" No one responded. They didn't need to. The message was clear in wide eyes and trembling hands. Without another word, Danica and Deja turned and walked away, their steps measured and controlled. Behind them, Brent's ragged breathing, Chase's muffled sniffles, and Logan's soft groan filled the quiet backlot. The only other sound was the gentle splash of water as the phones sank deeper into the puddle, their screens flickering out one by one. Whispers started even before first period. Danica noticed as they walked through Millstone High's front doors, clusters of students falling silent or quickly looking away. "Did you hear?" a sophomore girl whispered loudly. "They went crazy on the football team." "I heard they're like secret ninjas or something," another muttered. Deja held her head high, but Danica saw her sister's jaw tighten. They had expected this, but the twisted rumors still stung. "Collins sisters," a sharp voice cut through the murmurs. Ms. Peterson, the front office secretary, stood at the hallway's end, face pinched with disapproval. "Principal Harland wants to see you immediately." The twins exchanged glances and followed Ms. Peterson through the administrative wing. The click of her heels echoed sharply, a countdown to confrontation. Principal Harlan's office door was open. She sat behind a massive oak desk, hands folded precisely. Vice Principal Wexler lingered nearby, clutching a manila folder like armor. "Sit down, girls." Harlan's voice was smooth but steel beneath. They sat upright, hands folded, twin images of composed dignity. "We've received disturbing reports about yesterday afternoon," Harlan began. "3 of our star athletes claim they were viciously attacked, unprovoked." "That's not what happened," Deja said quietly. "Oh, really?" Harlan arched an eyebrow. "Because Chase Dunning has a broken nose, Brent Ashford bruised ribs, and Logan Mitchell a sprained wrist. Care to explain?" "They cornered us behind the gym," Danica replied evenly. "They were filming us, making threats, grabbing our clothes." "Where's this video?" Wexler interrupted, finally speaking. "If they filmed it, there should be evidence." "Their phones fell in a puddle," Deja answered. Harlan laughed sharply, dismissive. "How convenient. And I suppose the security cameras in that area just happened to malfunction yesterday?" Principal Harlan's tone was sharp. The twins said nothing, recalling how the camera's red light was already off when they arrived at their usual stretching spot. "This is a serious matter," Harlan continued. "We have 3 respected students with documented injuries, and we have your history of confrontational behavior." "What history?" Danica's voice was calm, but her eyes flashed. "We've never been in trouble before." Vice Principal Wexler chimed in. "Coach Thompson mentioned you've been resistant to feedback." "The football coach?" Deja frowned. "He's never even spoken to us." "The point is," Harlan interrupted, "violence cannot be tolerated at Millstone High, especially not from students who represent our school as cheerleaders." She slid 2 letters across her polished desk. "You're both suspended for 2 weeks, effective immediately. This will make you ineligible for the next competition." "But they attacked us." Deja's composure cracked slightly. "We were defending ourselves." Harlan's smile was cold. "Against 3 boys with no disciplinary record, stellar GPAs, and scouts from Division I schools watching." "So their future matters more than our safety?" Danica asked quietly. Wexler shifted uncomfortably, but Harlan's expression hardened. "I'm protecting the school's reputation. If you can't accept that, perhaps Millstone isn't the right fit for you." The threat hung heavy in the air. "Your father has been notified," Harlan added. "You must leave campus immediately. Any attempt to contact the other students involved will result in further disciplinary action." The twins stood perfectly in sync, their movements controlled, despite the fire burning inside. They took the suspension letters without a word. "Remember, girls," Harlan called as they reached the door, "choices have consequences." The drive home was silent. Their father had already left for work, but Aunt Renee waited in the kitchen. Her calm presence filled the room as the twins sank into their chairs. "Tell me everything," she said simply. They recounted every detail, from the first taunts to the final confrontation. Renee listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. When they finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop with deliberate care. "Did you know," she said casually, "I spent 20 years as a civil rights attorney before retiring? I specialized in institutional discrimination and abuse of power." The twins stared at her in surprise. "The principal probably thinks she's protecting her school," Renee continued, fingers flying across the keyboard. "But she's about to learn something important." She looked up, and for the first time the twins saw a fierce light in her eyes. "This isn't about discipline," she said, voice hard with certainty. "It's about control. Now they've picked a fight with the wrong family." The next day, Isaiah Grant sat hunched over a library table, nervously tracing the edge of his sketchbook. The library was nearly empty. Most students had rushed home after the final bell. Only the soft hum of an old ceiling fan broke the silence. Deja slid into the chair across from him, Danica beside her, placing a small notebook on the table. They'd swapped their cheer uniforms for simple t-shirts and jeans, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. "Thanks for meeting with us, Isaiah," Deja said softly. She'd noticed him in art class, quiet, solitary, observant. We appreciate you talking with us." Isaiah glanced around the empty room, then down at his hands. "I saw what happened," he mumbled, "with Brent and the others. Everyone says you attacked them for no reason. We know that's not true," Danica said gently, "and we think you might know how they really behave when teachers aren't watching." Isaiah's shoulders tightened. He flipped through his sketchbook, pages filled with superheroes and manga. His finger stopped on a half-finished Spider-Man. "It was last semester," he began, still not looking up. "I answered a question in AP history before Brent could. Just a simple question about the Civil War. He got mad, said I was trying to make him look stupid." Danica's pen moved quietly as he continued. "After class, he followed me into the locker room. No one else was there. He shoved me against the lockers, said I needed to learn to keep my mouth shut." Isaiah's voice grew quieter. "Said people like me should know their place." "Did you tell anyone?" Deja asked, though she already knew. Isaiah gave a bitter laugh. "Coach Thompson walked in right after, saw me on the ground, saw Brent standing there. You know what he said? 'Boys will be boys.' Then he told me to toughen up." Danica wrote faster, capturing every detail. "Has anything like this happened to other students?" "Marcus Chen," Isaiah said quietly. "They destroyed his science project last year, the one headed to the state finals. And Jasmine Rodriguez? They spread rumors about her until she had to transfer schools." He finally looked up, meeting their eyes. "They always get away with it. Their parents donate too much money. They win too many games." "Not anymore," Deja said firmly, pulling out her phone and opening the voice recorder app. "Would you be willing to tell your story again? We'll keep you anonymous if you want." Isaiah stared at the phone a long moment, then straightened his shoulders just slightly. "Use my name. I'm tired of being quiet." For the next 20 minutes, Isaiah spoke into the recorder, remembering dates, exact words, witnesses who looked away. With every detail, his voice grew stronger. When he finished, Danica showed him her notes. "Is this accurate? We want to get everything right." Isaiah read through carefully, adding clarifications. Then he pulled out his phone. "I have something else." He scrolled through screenshots. Texts Brent sent me afterwards, threatening me if I told anyone. I saved them just in case. Never thought anyone would actually care. "We care," Deja said softly. "You're not alone anymore." Later that evening, the twins sat in Aunt Renee's study, surrounded by papers and laptops. The room smelled of old books and leather, with walls lined by legal volumes and martial arts trophies, a perfect blend of their aunt's two passions. "Start with a chronological timeline," Renee instructed, pointing to Danica's notebook. "Each incident needs documentation and supporting evidence." Deja was already creating digital folders on her laptop, Isaiah's testimony, screenshots, dates of locker room incidents. "Good," Renee nodded, "but no cloud storage. Everything stays on encrypted drives." She pulled out a small black USB stick. "This is your master copy. We'll make backups, but nothing goes online until we're ready." "What about social media?" Danica asked, showing her aunt the growing collection of racist memes and messages from the football team. "Screenshot everything," Renee replied, "but don't engage or let them know we're watching. Once they realize we're building a case, they'll delete evidence." The twins worked methodically, organizing testimonies, threatening texts, injury photos, dates, and a growing list of potential witnesses. "Remember," Renee said, watching them work, "this isn't just about punishment. We're building a pattern showing how the school enables and protects some students while silencing others." "Like a legal case?" Danica looked up. "Exactly." Renee smiled grimly. "They think suspensions and intimidation will bury this. We're going to show them what real justice looks like." The study grew darker as they worked, but none noticed. Page by page, file by file, they built something powerful, something impossible to ignore. The morning sun filtered through the paper screens of Aunt Renee's dojo, casting long shadows on the polished hardwood floor. Deja and Danica stood barefoot in their crisp white guy midnight black belts wrapped tightly around their waists. Sweat dampened their hair after just 20 minutes of training. Again, Renee commanded, voice calm but firm. She circled the twins as they moved through the kata, their motions perfectly synchronized, this time slower. Feel every transition. The twins repeated the form, feet whispering across the floor. Each punch, block, and kick flowed like water, but Renee saw tension in their shoulders and a slight tremor in their hands. Stop. She moved between them, adjusting Danica's front stance. You're thinking about them, aren't you? The boys, the school, the suspension. No, Aunt Renee, Danica said, but her eyes betrayed her. Yes, you are, Renee said, studying both girls. I see it in your technique. You're fighting shadows instead of focusing on the moment. She tapped Deja's raised fist. And you're clenching too hard. Your knuckles are white. Deja exhaled slowly, relaxing her hand. It's hard not to think about it. Everyone at school is talking, taking their side. That's exactly why we're here. Renee stepped to the front of the dojo, facing her nieces. This training isn't about fighting. It's about maintaining control when everything around you is chaos. She demonstrated the next movement, her body flowing with decades of practiced grace. Watch my breathing. See how each motion starts from the center. That's where your power comes from. Not anger, not fear. The twins mirrored her movements, matching her rhythm. Sunlight caught the subtle ripple of muscle beneath their skin, years of dedication visible in every move. Better? Renee nodded. Now tell me what you learned yesterday. Keep moving while you speak. Isaiah Grant, Danica said, executing a perfect sidekick. He told us about Brent attacking him in the locker room, Renee pressed, watching their form. Coach Thompson covered it up, Deja added, her back fist slicing through the air. Just like they tried to cover up what happened to us. Good. What else? There are others, Danica continued, smoothly transitioning into a blocking sequence. Marcus Chen, Jasmine Rodriguez. We're making a list, Deja said, her next punch breaking her rhythm, charged with anger. How do you feel about that? Angry, Danica admitted. They've hurt so many people and just get away with it. Exactly. Renee clapped sharply. That anger is what you need to control. Channel it into precision, not power. She moved behind Deja, adjusting her stance. The system wants you to lose control to fit their story about violent black girls. The twins moved through the kata again, their breathing steadier now. Morning light filled the dojo, warming the wood beneath their feet. Remember, Renee said softly, whenever anger rises, come back to your center, to your training. She watched as their movements became fluid and controlled. The real fight isn't with fists, it's with focus. They trained for another hour, sweat darkening their GIs, muscles burning from effort. Renee pushed them harder than usual, testing their limits, watching for any cracks in composure. Finally, she called a halt. The twins bowed to her, then to the dojo shrine. Their faces were tired but calm. The morning's tension dissolved through disciplined movement. Good work, Renee said, tossing each a towel. Remember this feeling, this clarity. You'll need it in the days ahead. That evening, the twins sat cross-legged on Deja's bed, scrolling through their phones. The morning's peace felt distant as notifications buzzed nonstop. Look at this, Danica said, turning her screen toward Deja. A video was spreading fast across local social media, shared hundreds of times. Someone had edited the footage from behind the gym, cutting everything except the moment Danica's fist connected with Chase's face. The caption read, "Watch these violent freaks attack innocent football players. RT to show everyone what these cheerleaders really are." Deja's hands clenched tightly around her phone as she watched the doctored clip loop again and again. Comments flooded beneath it. They should be arrested. This is what happens when you let thugs into good schools. My son says they started it. They're dangerous. The video had already reached thousands, spreading through the county like wildfire. Each share, each hateful comment felt like another blow, not to their bodies, but to their truth. Monday morning hit like a slap to the face. Danica and Deja stepped out of their father's car, heads held high despite the hostile crowd at Millstone High's front entrance. Parents clutched protest signs, "Keep our children safe," and "No violence in our schools." Just keep walking, Danica whispered, gripping her backpack strap tightly. Their footsteps echoed across the parking lot, drawing every eye. A local news van from Channel 8 parked near the school sign, its satellite dish raised like an accusing finger. In front of the camera stood Mrs. Ashford, Brent's mother, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the morning light as she dabbed at fake tears. "These girls viciously attacked my son and his friends," her voice carried across the lot. "They're trained fighters who use their skills as weapons. What kind of school allows such dangerous students?" Deja's jaw clenched, but Danica touched her arm. They'd practiced this with Aunt Renee all weekend, staying calm under fire, letting the lies roll off like water. Inside wasn't much better. Students parted in the hallways as if the twins carried something contagious. Whispers followed them. "I heard they broke Chase's nose in 3 places. My mom says they shouldn't be allowed back, probably on steroids or something." At their lockers, someone had taped printed screenshots of the edited video, the word thugs scrawled across them in red marker. Danica carefully peeled them off, folded the papers, and tucked them into her pocket as evidence, just as Aunt Renee had taught. "Look who decided to show up." A sharp voice cut through the hallway chatter. Madison Pierce, head of the PTA and Chase's mother, stood with arms crossed, designer handbag swinging. "I've already called an emergency meeting. We'll see how long you two last after that." "Good morning, Mrs. Pierce," Danica said evenly, loud enough for nearby students to hear. "We look forward to sharing our side of the story at the meeting, including the full video footage." Madison's perfectly lined lips twitched, but before she could answer, the first bell rang. Students shuffled to class, leaving the twins alone in the emptying hallway. Their morning classes blurred in a haze of cold shoulders and pointed silence. Even teachers who'd once praised their work avoided eye contact. During third period, Deja caught Brent smirking at them from across the room, his phone buzzing constantly with supportive messages. At lunch, they sat alone at their usual table. The other cheerleaders huddled at the far end of the cafeteria, stealing nervous glances their way. Coach Riley passed by without a word, her shoulders tense. "Remember what Aunt Renee said?" Danica murmured, picking at her sandwich. "They want us to crack, to prove them right." Deja nodded, but her eyes kept drifting to where Logan, Chase, and Brent held court at their table, laughing and playing the victims. The bruises on Chase's face had faded to yellow, but he touched them dramatically whenever anyone looked his way. The afternoon brought more protests. Parents lined the school entrance, phones raised to film the twins. As they left, someone shouted, "Go back where you came from!" Another voice called out, "Criminals!" Their father waited in the car, knuckles white on the steering wheel. He wanted to confront the crowd, but Aunt Renee insisted they stick to the plan, document everything, build the case, and wait for the right moment. That evening, they gathered in Aunt Renee's study. The walls, lined with law books and martial arts trophies, seemed to absorb the day's tension. A knock at the door announced Carmen Lee's arrival. Carmen, sharp-eyed and practical in her pressed blazer, had known Aunt Renee since college. She set her recorder on the desk and studied the twins with experienced scrutiny. "Show her," Renee said quietly. Danica opened her laptop, pulling up their carefully organized evidence. The unedited video showing the boys' harassment, screenshots of threatening messages, testimonies from other victims, and photos of vandalized lockers. Carmen reviewed everything silently, taking notes. Finally, she looked up. "This is solid. The kind of story that could go viral, not just locally, but nationally." "Good," Deja said firmly. "Not good," Carmen corrected. "Not yet. You need to understand what that means. Right now, you're dealing with school bullies and angry parents. If this goes wide, you'll face death threats, doxing, and racist trolls from across the country. Your whole lives will be under a microscope." The twins exchanged glances. Danica reached for her sister's hand. "The question isn't whether I can help you," Carmen continued, closing her notebook. "It's whether you're ready for what comes next. This kind of exposure changes everything, forever." Carmen's article dropped like a bomb at exactly 9 a.m., timed perfectly. Just as parents settled into work, Students checked their phones between classes, and morning news teams searched for fresh stories. The unedited footage played crystal clear. Logan, Chase, and Brent stalking the twins to the back lot. Their crude comments, the first shove, the grab at Danica's uniform, and then the twins' clean, controlled response that lasted mere seconds. Beside the video, Carmen wove a devastating narrative. Isaiah Grant's testimony about Brent's locker room assault, 3 other students of color describing similar incidents, screenshots of racist memes, and documentation of the school's pattern of protecting star athletes while punishing minorities. By 10 a.m., a stand with the Collins twins was trending across Georgia. By noon, it had spread to neighboring states. "Look at this," Deja whispered during lunch, showing her phone to Danica. Their usual empty table was suddenly filled with supporters, mostly other minority students who had been silent before. The petition for their reinstatement had just crossed 15,000 signatures. The football players' table was notably quiet. Logan kept his head down, furiously texting. Chase's mother had pulled him out of school early. Brent paced the hallway between classes, snapping at anyone who looked his way. Principal Harlan made an announcement over the PA system about maintaining order and avoiding social media speculation, but the dam had broken. Students openly shared the article in class. Teachers whispered in the break room. Coach Riley stood in her office doorway, arms crossed, watching it all unfold with a tight expression. By 3 p.m., the signature count hit 22,000. Local news vans circled the school like sharks. Mrs. Ashford's tearful interview from yesterday now played alongside the full footage of her son's harassment, making her claims ring hollow. "Don't engage with any reporters," Aunt Renee reminded them as they left school. "Let the evidence speak for itself." At home, they watched the numbers climb. Carmen's article had been picked up by major news sites. Civil rights activists shared it. Celebrity athletes retweeted it. By dinner, the petition had passed 30,000 signatures. "You girls did good," Marcus said quietly over dinner, pride mingling with worry in his eyes. "But stay alert. Some people don't like being exposed." They tried to sleep, but their phones kept buzzing with notifications. Support messages poured in from across the country. The hashtag had gone national. At midnight, a sharp crack of breaking glass jolted them awake. "Girls, stay upstairs," Marcus's voice carried from below. Danica and Deja rushed to the window. 3 figures in hoodies ran from their driveway. Their father's car tires lay flat, slashed open. Red spray paint gleamed wet on the concrete. "Thugs," in jagged letters. Marcus stood on the porch, a baseball bat held loosely at his side. He wasn't threatening anyone, just guarding his home, but red and blue lights flashed at the end of the street. "Drop the weapon!" An officer's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Hands where we can see them!" "This is my property," Marcus called back calmly. "Someone just vandalized." "Drop the bat now." The twins watched in horror as 3 police cars screeched into their driveway. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting conflicting orders. Marcus slowly set the bat down and raised his hands. "There are security cameras," he said, nodding to the corners of the house, one of Aunt Renee's precautions. "They'll show who did this. I was just protecting my family." But they weren't listening. An officer kicked the bat away while 2 others roughly cuffed Marcus. He tried to explain, but they read him his rights and pushed him toward a patrol car. "Dad!" Deja screamed, rushing for the stairs. Danica grabbed her arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Record everything." Their phones stayed steady despite shaking hands. They captured every moment, the officers refusing to take their vandalism report, treating Marcus like a threat while ignoring the real crime, neighbors filming from lawns. Aunt Renee arrived just as they loaded Marcus into the patrol car. She immediately made calls, her voice sharp and professional despite her hurried clothes. "Carmen, they just proved our point. Get your camera team here now. Call Judge Martinez. Wake him if you have to. They're about to learn what kind of family they're dealing with." The twins stood in the doorway, phones recording as the police cars drove off with their father. Their driveway glowed red from the emergency lights, the spray-painted slur glaring like a wound. "Send everything to Carmen," Aunt Renee ordered, dialing another number. Every second of footage. They thought the article was bad. Wait until America sees how they treat a black father protecting his home. The next morning, Marcus Collins walked out of the police station with his shoulders tight but head held high. Aunt Renee waited by her car as Danica and Deja rushed to hug their father. "I'm okay," he said, voice tired from a sleepless night. The drive home was silent. Marcus stared out the window, faint marks from handcuffs still visible on his wrists. The twins sat in the back seat, phones buzzing non-stop with messages they couldn't bring themselves to read. Their driveway was clean now. Aunt Renee had arranged pressure washing at dawn, but the slashed tires remained, a stark reminder of last night's violence. Camera crews lingered down the street, held back by police tape. Inside, the family gathered around the kitchen table. The morning light felt too bright, too normal for what they'd just endured. Aunt Renee made coffee, while Danica pulled up Carmen's latest article on her tablet. "The footage is everywhere," she said quietly. "Both attacks, the boys at school and what happened here. People are furious." "Good," Deja said sharply. "Let them see. Let them all see what happens when black girls defend themselves, when a black father protects his home." Marcus rubbed his face. "I just stood there, didn't move, didn't threaten, still ended up in cuffs. Because they don't want peace," Deja said, clenching her fists. "They want obedience. They want us quiet, accepting whatever they do to us." Aunt Renee set coffee cups in front of them, her movements precise and calm. "Then we give them justice instead." She opened her laptop, revealing files they'd never seen before. "I've been gathering evidence since the first incident, not just about the boys, but the whole system." She scrolled through documents. Principal Harlan's history of dismissing harassment complaints from minority students. Vice Principal Wexler's emails showing biased disciplinary actions. The school board's pattern of protecting some athletes while punishing others. "How did you get all this?" Danica asked, leaning forward. "I have friends who care about justice," Renee replied. "Former clients, attorneys, teachers who stayed quiet too long. Once people saw you girls standing up, they started sending me everything." She turned the laptop toward them. Spreadsheets breaking down years of disciplinary data by race, emails revealing covered-up incidents, performance reviews documenting vanished complaints. "The Department of Education has a civil rights division," Renee explained. "They investigate patterns of discrimination in schools. One incident might be dismissed, but this is systemic." Marcus studied the screen. "You've been building a case all along," he said softly. Renee nodded. "Everything, the viral videos, Carmen's articles, even last night, proves the pattern. They protect white violence while criminalizing black defense." She stood suddenly, pacing the kitchen. "So we're not just fighting 3 racist boys. We're fighting the whole machine that lets them act this way." "Exactly." Renee's voice was steel. "Those boys are symptoms. The disease runs deeper. And now we have proof." Danica scrolled through the files, piecing it together. The football team's disciplinary records compared to others, the missing security footage, how the school handled their suspension versus white students involved in fights, plus witness statements. "Isaiah Grant wasn't the only one," Renee added. "I have testimonials from dozens of current and former students, parents whose complaints were ignored, and teachers pressured to change grades for certain athletes," Aunt Renee said. They spent the morning organizing evidence into categories: harassment patterns, abuse of power, false reporting, and racial disparities in punishment. Marcus brewed more coffee, while the twins typed detailed statements about both incidents. By evening, their dining room had transformed into a war room, laptops, documents, and legal papers covering every surface. Carmen arrived with fresh footage from the police station, showing how Marcus was treated differently from white homeowners reporting vandalism. "This is bigger than us now," Danica said quietly, watching Aunt Renee prepare the final complaint. "This could change everything at Millstone." "That's the point," Renee replied steadily. "Justice isn't just about punishing wrong, it's about fixing the system that allowed it." As night fell, They gathered one last time around Renee's laptop. The complaint was 47 pages: evidence, testimonies, legal arguments, statistical proof of racial bias, video documentation of selective enforcement, a clear pattern of institutional discrimination. "Ready?" Renee asked, cursor hovering over the submit button. The twins clasped hands under the table, just like before every competition. Marcus placed a hand on each of their shoulders. Together, they nodded. Renee hit submit. The Department of Education's Civil Rights Complaint Portal confirmed receipt. Case number OCR 2023-11142. "Now what?" Deja asked. "Now," Renee said, closing her laptop with quiet finality, "we show them what real strength looks like." The school board meeting room buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled. People lined the walls and spilled into the hallway. News cameras blinked red like watchful eyes. Danica and Deja Collins stood at the podium, matching white blazers over black dresses. Their braids were pulled back neatly, every detail chosen to counter the violent thugs narrative. Aunt Renee sat in the front row, a thick folder in her lap. Marcus stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching Principal Harland and Vice Principal Wexler shift uneasily at the table. Board President Thompson cleared his throat. "You have 3 minutes for public comment." Deja stepped forward, hands steady on the podium. The microphone caught her clear, controlled voice. "You punished us for not being afraid." The room fell silent. Even the camera operators leaned forward. "When 3 football players cornered us behind the gym, you expected us to cower. When they grabbed our clothes and pushed us against a fence, you wanted us to cry and beg. When they filmed it all laughing, you thought we'd stay quiet to protect ourselves." She paused, letting the words sink in. Several board members avoided her gaze. "Instead, we defended ourselves. We used the training we've practiced since we were 6. We didn't hurt them permanently. We didn't use excessive force. We simply stopped an attack." Danica stepped beside her, pulling up photos on her tablet. The images appeared on the large screen behind them. Racist memes from the locker room, threatening messages, security footage, timestamps that mysteriously disappeared. "But self-defense wasn't the story you wanted to tell," Deja continued. "Because when black students stand up, you call it aggression. When we protect ourselves, you label us violent. When we refuse to be victims, you make us villains." Principal Harlan started to speak, but Thompson raised his hand. The 3-minute timer ticked on. "We spent the last week gathering evidence." Deja's voice grew stronger. "Not just about our case, but every student of color who's been silenced, every incident swept under the rug, every double standard in your disciplinary policies." Danica advanced the slides, graphs showing racial disparities in suspensions, redacted emails about protecting certain students' futures, witness statements from other harassment victims. Isaiah Grant was shoved into lockers for answering questions in class. Maria Rodriguez had her art projects destroyed while security cameras were malfunctioning. James Chen was told to toughen up when students mocked his accent. The crowd murmured. Several teachers nodded slowly. But the football players who did these things, they got warnings, counseling, second chances. Their futures were too important for real consequences. Vice Principal Wexler tugged at his collar. Principal Harlan's face flushed red. "Then they vandalized our home." Deja's voice cracked slightly. "Sprayed racial slurs on our driveway, slashed our tires, and when our father stood on his porch to protect us, the police arrested him instead of the criminals." Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled furiously. "We're not asking for special treatment," Deja said, straightening her shoulders. "We're demanding equal protection, equal justice, and equal respect for every student's dignity and safety," Danica said, stepping up to the microphone. It was rare for her to speak publicly, and the room leaned in. "The Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights received our complaint this week," she continued quietly. 47 pages of evidence, witness statements, and statistical analysis. They've already assigned an investigator. Principal Harlan's face shifted from red to pale. "But you have a chance right now," Danica pressed on. to start fixing this before they force you to show Millstone High truly believes in protecting all its students, to prove justice matters more than shielding bullies with strong throwing arms. The timer buzzed. Board President Thompson reached to cut off the microphone, but the crowd's reaction drowned out any interruption. Parents stood and applauded. Students supporting the twins began chanting, "Collins, Collins, Collins." Board members exchanged uneasy glances. Papers shuffled nervously. Principal Harlan whispered urgently to Vice Principal Wexler, who seemed to shrink in his seat. Thompson tapped his gavel weakly. "We will conduct a thorough internal review of all disciplinary procedures and bias complaints." The chanting grew louder. Aunt Renee smiled slightly, watching Harlan and Wexler gather their things quickly, avoiding eye contact as they headed for the side door. "Collins, Collins, Collins!" The twins stood tall at the podium, shoulders back and heads held high. They didn't smile. They didn't need to. The truth had been spoken. The evidence was public. The system that tried to silence them now squirmed under the bright lights of exposure. Camera flashes lit the room like lightning. As Harlan and Wexler slipped out the door, the chanting continued, drowning out Thompson's attempts to restore order. "Collins, Collins, Collins!" The morning after the board meeting, Carmen Lee stood outside Millstone High, microphone steady as students streamed into the building, many wearing homemade "Stand with the Collins Twins" t-shirts. In a dramatic development following last night's explosive school board meeting, Millstone High School has placed Principal Dennis Harland and Vice Principal James Wexler on immediate administrative leave, Carmen reported, voice crisp and professional. This decision comes after mounting evidence of systemic discrimination and failure to protect minority students. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with excitement and tension. Teachers whispered in hallway clusters. Students constantly checked phones for updates. The Collins twins weren't present. Their suspension wouldn't be officially lifted until next week. By lunchtime, the school's official statement appeared online. Carmen read it live on the afternoon news. Following serious allegations regarding disciplinary procedures and student safety, Millstone High School has placed Principal Harland and Vice Principal Wexler on paid administrative leave pending a thorough investigation. An interim team will ensure continued operations. The school board is committed to addressing all concerns about equal treatment and protection for our diverse student body. Carmen's camera panned to empty parking spots where Harland and Wexler usually parked. Notably absent was any comment from District Superintendent William Morrison, who declined multiple interview requests about his oversight of Millstone's disciplinary policies. The next day, more details emerged. Security cameras that had been malfunctioning suddenly worked perfectly under the interim administration. Files Harland marked as lost appeared neatly organized in the school's digital system. Carmen stood in front of district offices, expression serious. Sources confirmed that digital forensics experts recovered dozens of deleted emails between Principal Harland and coaches, revealing a pattern of interference in disciplinary cases involving certain athletes. The football team practiced without Logan, Chase, and Brent, who were temporarily suspended pending hearings. Their teammates looked subdued. No more laughing or shoving during plays. The cockiness that defined their behavior had vanished under scrutiny. On the third day, Carmen interviewed several students who came forward with their own stories. The camera focused on Isaiah Grant, voice steady as he described the locker room incident. Brent would wait until no teachers were around, Isaiah explained. He'd say things like, "Know your place or stay quiet," while shoving me. When I reported it, Wexler told me I was too sensitive about roughhousing. Maria Rodriguez showed the remains of her destroyed art portfolio. They ruined weeks of work, but the cameras were broken that day. Principal Harlan said without evidence, it was just my word against theirs. The disciplinary hearing was set for 9 a.m. Logan, Chase, and Brent arrived separately with their parents, all dressed in suits that barely hid their nerves. An independent panel, including 2 civil rights attorneys and an educational policy expert, oversaw the hearing. Inside the room, evidence flashed on the projector. Screenshots of group chats revealed the boys planning their harassment. Recovered videos showed their edited clips side by side with the originals. Their subpoenaed phones contained hundreds of racist memes and threatening messages. Chase broke down first, admitting to the planned ambush, vandalism, and coordinated social media attacks. Logan sat stone-faced. Brent's father loudly defended his son's promising future. But the evidence was overwhelming. Texts showed Logan orchestrating the attack. Brent's social media overflowed with racial slurs and boasts about terrorizing students. Chase's phone held the original, unedited video of their assault attempt. The panel deliberated less than an hour before issuing a unanimous verdict. Immediate expulsion for all three, with athletic scholarships revoked. Carmen reported live outside the hearing room, calling it a landmark moment in how Millstone High handles harassment and discrimination. The boys and their parents left separately, avoiding cameras. Logan's facade crumbled into barely controlled rage. Brent's father shouted about lawyers and appeals. Chase shuffled out last, just a teenager who'd made terrible choices and lost everything. Inside the empty room, the evidence remained. Hundreds of messages, dozens of videos, years of documented harassment. The truth, once hidden behind missing footage and lost files, now stood undeniable. The gym buzzed with nervous energy as students filled the chairs where the twins once practiced. Nearly 1,000 waited for a historic assembly. Interim Principal Elena Delgado stood at the podium with quiet dignity, a stark contrast to Harlan's intimidation. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like to welcome back Danica and Deja Collins." The twins entered in their cheer uniforms. The room fell silent. They walked with perfect posture, heads held high. Their father sat front row next to Aunt Renee, who smiled with quiet pride. Ms. Delgado addressed the crowd. "What happened exposed serious failures. You were failed by the institutions meant to protect you. When you defended yourselves, you were punished. When you spoke out, you were silenced. When you presented evidence, you were labeled troublemakers." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "On behalf of Millstone High and the district, we offer our deepest apology. Your courage has forced us to confront uncomfortable truths," she continued, introducing the new disciplinary committee, including civil rights advocates and trauma counselors. "Because of you, immediate changes are underway. Zero tolerance for racial harassment, mandatory bias training, and a student-led diversity council with real power." Danica and Deja's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "But policies alone aren't enough," Ms. Delgado said. "We need a cultural shift. The days of protecting some students while ignoring others are over. Every student deserves safety, respect, and to be heard." She called on witnesses to speak up and invited the fearful to find their voice. Then, turning to the twins, "You are formally reinstated, your records cleared. Your championship trophy will be displayed proudly with your names as captains." The crowd erupted in applause, growing into thunderous cheers. Ms. Delgado raised her hand for quiet. "But most importantly, you've taught us all a lesson about courage, dignity, and standing up for what's right." The gym rose as one for a standing ovation. Danica and Deja moved gracefully down the aisle, many students applauding and a young cheerleader looking on in awe, mirroring their confident posture. Saturday morning sunlight streamed into the rec center where Aunt Renee helped tape flyers. Free self-defense class for girls, taught by Danica and Deja Collins. Saturdays 9 to 11 a.m. All levels welcome. Learn to stand strong. "Are you sure about this?" Renee asked, smoothing a flyer. "We're sure," Deja said, adjusting her black GI. "Girls need to know they have options." "You taught us," Danica added, rolling out mats. Renee smiled, touching her worn black belt. "Self-defense isn't just moves. It's confidence, awareness, knowing when to fight, and when to walk away." The girls formed a circle on the mats, some nervous, others eager. "Welcome," Danica began. "Every girl deserves to feel strong, safe, confident." "This isn't about fighting," Deja said. "It's about knowing your worth and standing up for yourself." Jasmine, a shy junior varsity cheerleader, asked, "What if someone bigger tries to hurt you?" "Size isn't everything," Danica replied, demonstrating a wrist escape. The class practiced blocks, escapes, and breathing exercises. "Goal isn't to fight," Deja reminded them, "but to make bullies think twice." By the end, even shy girls smiled, their confidence growing. Renee praised their focus and strength. "You're building community." The regional cheer competition buzzed with energy. All eyes turned to Millstone High's corner, where the Collins twins stretched in perfect sync, their reclaimed red and white uniforms gleaming. Signs from their self-defense students waved proudly in the bleachers. Coach Riley addressed the team with newfound respect. "Today isn't about perfect moves. It's about showing who we are." The twins performed with grace, each flip and leap carrying the weight of their story, discipline, dignity, and defiance. Carmen Lee and Principal Delgado watched from the judges' table, smiles hinting at hope. As the routine climaxed with their signature aerial twists, the crowd held its breath. Danica and Deja stuck the landing, final pose strong and unwavering. Silence. Then thunderous applause. Their teammates embraced them. Signs waved, cameras flashed. The twins held their pose, steady and proud. Aunt Renee and Marcus watched, eyes glistening with pride. They hadn't just won a competition. They'd shown that fighting back means holding on to yourself. Justice, earned with dignity, echoes far beyond any trophy.